Styles collectors, and welcome to another Bossk's Bounty video, and welcome to episode 248 of Ask Bossk Bounty. This is the weekly Q&A series that drops every Sunday, where I basically answer your questions. So if you do have a question for next week's episode and you want to be featured in the video, be sure to leave that question in the comments section of this video, and hopefully your question will be picked next week. We've got a bunch of good questions again this week, and I've got some other things to show you before we get into those questions. But this episode of Ask Bossk Bounty, being 248, is sponsored by VC48, which is the Weequay Skiff Master. Now, I would usually have that card back just around there, but unfortunately mine's graded and the glare would just be far too much. But it's an awesome figure, really cool card back, that one. If you've got all of the skiff guards, you'll know that it goes really well on your wall of carded figures. And yeah, just a really good release. And at one point it was actually quite an expensive figure on the secondary market. And fortunately for everybody in the community, Tungori actually had that one on their site as a loose figure, and that's where I managed to pick up my loose version. Unfortunately, I don't think Tungori is around at this moment in time. Hopefully he'll be back if it is indeed a he. But yeah, that's where I got my loose figure, and yeah, VC48, good release in the vintage collection. The other thing I want to say is a huge thank you to Jared for putting a super thanks on my previous video, which was the figure of the year video voted by you guys. Thank you so much, Jared. I really do appreciate the generosity and also your kind words on that comment. Thank you so much, buddy. Really appreciate it. And finally, before we get on to this week's questions, I just want to talk about these stands that you can see that I have some of my figures on at the moment. There's a really lovely guy in the community called Anthony. He has a YouTube channel called the Imperial Communique, and he has set up a new company, I guess, called Platoon Systems. Now, he is making action figure stands, and he's made a variety of different action figure stands. I'm going to show you a few of them before we get on to this week's questions very, very quickly. But I advise that you go and watch his video where he talks about all of the different stands and what you can do with them. Essentially, it allows you to build your platoons or squads, whatever you want to do. If you're an army builder, you can see that I've got some of the stormtroopers and some of the shore troopers sitting there on those stands there. And what I'll do is I'll just bring the camera back ever so slightly, so then I can show you some of the things in front of you on the camera. So first of all, as you can see, the stormtroopers are on like a base plate. And these are these things here, and they are interlocking base plates. So you could put two together, so that you could have like 4 squads, I guess. And that enables you to be able to pick up all of the figures at once rather than one by one, which is a pretty cool thing. And then these things sit in those squad bases. So you have a plate here with what? Space for 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 figures. So I guess that's a squad. And they're the ones that I'm using there. And what those do, they then slot in to there like so, and to there like so, enabling you to pick up your figures in one big lot. And as I said, you can put another 2 of those together. So you could pick up potentially, what's that, 10, 20, 40 figures all at once, which I think is a pretty helpful thing. Now, also, what you'll see there is that the Stormtroopers and the Shore Troopers, those 2 figures are renowned for having really shallow peg holes. So what Anthony's actually done, he's actually designed the peg holes so they are a little bit shorter. So the figures do actually stand up on those stands, and I might even be able to lift the Stormtrooper up here. There you go, you can just do that. So you can see he is on that stand. Even though he has the short peg holes, he is standing up on that stand. And now, all other stands that I've used, the heel is really high up due to the sort of peg holes being really high. So the way he's designed these is pretty cool in my opinion. But as I said, he is much better at showing you all the different stands that he has on his video. I will leave a link to that video in the description below. But just quickly, he does some of these interlocking stands as well. So you've got these 2 here, and as you'll see, the pegs are in different positions. So these are in the center for figures that have the peg hole in the center of the foot, and also they're at like attention because they're closer together, and these ones are more at ease, if you like. So if you had a trooper at ease, and you can see they're designed to have the peg hole in the back of the foot, in the heel, because it's slightly positioned at the back. And what these do, these interlock, so you could interlock them like so, And then you could have some figures with the middle peg hole and some with the toe peg hole, things like that, and then they would still line up in your squad. And then you can interlock these as many times as you like, I guess. He's also designed them for vintage style figures as well. So with a slightly thicker peg hole, you can see there. So I've just got a vintage Nim Num here, and he should stand on that really well. So there you go, absolutely perfect. Obviously the peg holes on the vintage figures were a lot more sort of standardized across all of the figures, pretty much the same on all of them. Whereas, as you know, the modern TVC figures and figures all across the 3.75 Hasbro lines, they've all got different peg holes. Some are in the foot, some are in the heel, some are in the center of the foot, some are shallow, some are not. But I think Anthony has actually created something pretty decent here, and also, if you're an army builder, something really actually quite helpful. Certainly for me as well. I do have a few squads of figures which I will be using these for, like my night troopers and things like that. So I'm thinking maybe you could have Thrawn at the front here, then your night troopers, a couple of the sort of assassin droids, things like that. I think that would look pretty cool. Anyway, that's enough about the stands. Anthony did send me a pack with loads of different things in there. Platoon Systems, I will put a link to the website in the description below. He also has an Instagram account for it as well, and I think they're pretty cool. And I said I'd take a look at them for him, and I'm actually pretty impressed. I really am. Lots of people out there do different stands. We also have the ones from Ian Butler where you sort of hook the foot in that little piece there, which are pretty good as well. But if you don't want to have that sort of thing over the foot, and if you wanted them to actually look like they're standing to attention or at ease or whatever in a little squad, then these are pretty perfect for that. So loving what people are doing in the community. Thank you for sending me those, Anthony. And yeah, anybody out there that wants to check them out, check out his video, link in the description below. All right, so that was a longer intro than I wanted, but I did want to give you a good look at those stands. If you happen to enjoy the video, hit the like button down below, subscribe if you're new, and let's get on to the first question. Collect says, happy holidays to you and the Fan BB. Do you think now that this upcoming year will not only hopefully be more fleshed out with a variety of characters, or do you think we are still to expect the same amount of repaints and repacks? And with the possibility of GameStop completely shutting down in the next year or so, who do you think would take up the Gaming Greats lineup? That's the first I've heard about GameStop, actually. That's completely new to me. But in terms of who would take up the Gaming Greats, well, when was the last time we saw a Gaming Greats in TVC? I think they still do them in the Black Series, but as far as I'm aware, I think Gaming Greats as a line in the Vintage Collection may be over. They may resurrect it, I don't know. But at this moment in time, I can't remember the last time that we had a figure that actually had the Gaming Greats logo on it. I don't think we got one last year, for example, even though we did get gaming figures. And in terms of your question about, this year about repacks and repaints, at the end of the day, I think we're probably going to get the same amount of newly tooled figures as we do in other years, maybe slightly more next year. We've got another question about that later on in the video. But ultimately, let's just say, for example, we have a maximum of 15 newly tooled figures a year, then unfortunately the other 35 figures, 40 figures that we're going to get this year will be some kind of repaint or retool. Potentially there'll be a few repacks in there. That's just the way it is, unfortunately. But hopefully we do get a better variety of characters, as you say there. Not too many Mandalorians this time. Let's try and get more of a variety of different characters this year. Hopefully that's the case anyway. Chris Curran says, the place to be for the most informative videos in the galaxy. Thank you, buddy. He says, here is my question. If we are going back to Tatooine, the next HasLab must be the Sandcrawler. Figures for the tiers could be some droids. A top tier unlocks Owen and Baru. Even at a price point of 700 for the size, you could put me down for 2, please. Pitch it to your Hasbro connection. Not that I actually have a Hasbro connection, buddy, but also, unfortunately, the Sandcrawler, as much as I would love that to be in the line, and I would definitely back it if it was a HasLab, I do believe that the Return to Tatooine themed HasLab will be the Cantina, because even though we've backed that already, it will be shipped in the year of Return to Tatooine, and that is why we're getting all of that supportive product in 2025. If there is a HasLab launched next year, it will be landing in 2026. So I don't think it'll be like Tatooine related, unfortunately, for the Sandcrawler. Alfred Pednew says, question for next week, does Little Bossk collect Star Wars micro machines? He doesn't really collect them as such, but he does have a few of them. He has some of those like little mini opening heads that has one little figure in there. I think he has the Gamorrean Guard and Leia Bouche, things like that. But in terms of actually like full-on collecting them, no, he doesn't. TVC all the way, buddy. Channel member Charlie Howard says, hey BB, it's awesome you got the Ghost. My parents got it me for Christmas, but we're still waiting on it to ship. Well, I hope you've got it since then, buddy. Question for next week, do you think we will ever see Baze Malbus in TVC? I don't know, man. I really do hope so. I'm never going to stop asking for Baze Malbus. Once again, he will be very, very near the top of my March Madness submission, which is starting very, very soon, actually. So be sure to start thinking about who you want in your top 25s. And yeah, as I say, Baze Malbus will be on mine and until they make him. Andrew Cook says, hey B, big question for next week. I've been thinking about how we might get an ATTE in TVC. It seems like a $200 or $300 vehicle, so it could be a Pulse exclusive or a HasLab. If they did make an ATTE for the next HasLab, what features tiers would you want to see? A drop ship to carry it into battle, blast effects, an ATRT that can fold up and be stored in the back. Would you want named clones for the crew or just an ATTE driver, gunner, etc.? Wow, man, there's a lot to unpack in there, but ultimately the ATT is something that I do not actually have in my collection. It has been released before in previous lines, Legacy Collection, things like that. And maybe you're thinking that that one isn't good enough, possibly. What I would say is I did see on Instagram the other day, I will try and find the photo and then credit the person that did it, but they did a custom dropship for the ATTE, and it's absolutely massive. Obviously, it looks a little bit like a gunship, but it's not. Basically, it's much bigger than that. It carries an ATTE, and I would absolutely love one of those in the vintage collection. I really, really would. I know it would be huge, but I think it would be really, really cool. I always loved the Lego set that they did years ago for the Clone Wars, where you got the dropship and the ATTE. Absolutely fantastic set. That is really rare on the secondary market now, really expensive. And yeah, to get one of those in 3.75 inch would be great. But in terms of what you're mentioning there, I think an ATT by itself should just be a Pulse exclusive, or however they want to do their vehicles these days. I don't really feel that that warrants to being a HasLab. And yeah, I don't think I'd really want any named clones packed in with that either. So just some standard clones, and yeah, the driver and gunner would be helpful as well. Rock Stamborski says, hi, I'm a new subscriber and love the content. Merry Christmas, looking forward to the new year. My collection is mostly droid. I really like customs available. Is there a droid you'd like to see made or redone? I like the clear domes of the Death Star droids and a couple of modern designs that haven't been made into series packs. Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of droids in the line and in Star Wars in general, and there's definitely some that we still need to be made in TVC. I can think of 2 medical droids from the original 96 I would love to see in the vintage collection, and that is obviously FX7 and 21B. 2 amazing card backs as well that I'd like to see in the vintage collection. I would definitely keep a set of those carded for sure if we got those. So there's 2 that I would absolutely love. But yeah, even more Astromechs as well. Can't forget C-3PO, and he again will be very, very near the top of my top 25 March Madness submission list. Andy McGlink says, Happy New Year, BB. Question for next week. With Andor Season 2 coming up, do you think we'll get additional TVC yet unseen? So I'm pretty sure we will get stuff for Andor Season 2, but I believe that it will be minimal. If you look at Yak Face's list on his website, he has a couple there, I think, listed down. Obviously, it doesn't tell you what the characters are, but something from Andor. I really couldn't tell you what that's going to be. Probably Andor in his outfit that you've got in the Black series that they've released. But unfortunately, I do feel the amount of figures that we will get from Andor Season 1 and Season 2 will be quite minimal. And that's a big shame because I'm a huge fan of the series. CZA ETC says the HasLab projects have been great so far, but I think it's time we get an Imperial-related HasLab. Question for next week, what is an Imperial HasLab that you would like Hasbro to make consider? Well, this is kind of the reason why I've got this set up in the way that I have, not only to show you the stands for that army building purpose, but also the Emperor's Royal Guard standing there, because I think if we're ever going to have an Imperial related HasLab, it has to be the Imperial shuttle. I would absolutely love for them to do that. Of course, we have the vintage version, the Kenner version, and then we've had a couple since then which are the same mold. But I think a HasLab Imperial shuttle would be fantastic, much bigger than the previous version, so that the cockpit holds the right amount of people, and the ramp, you can actually use it for the Emperor to come out of and things like that. it would make me want to get loads more of these stormtroopers and actually more of these stands to sort of create that scene for the Emperor's arrival. That would be awesome. I know a lot of people that already do that with the present one, but I think, yeah, an Imperial related HasLab for me would have to be the shuttle. Manuel Vicario says, hey, big question for next week. What's your thoughts on Hasbro creating 4 or 5 packs of random clone Mandalorian heads so that we can build out our armies? I know Mattel did it with the Masters of the Universe figures. So I'm all for Hasbro sort of giving us different things where we can have, like, I don't know, different Imperial officers and things like that. So, for example, that officers pack that we got, it would have been nice to have maybe a set of 4 heads included in there. So then you can make more generic Imperial officers. However, with the 2 examples that you've mentioned there, clones and Mandalorians, I tend to display mine with the helmets on, and I'm not really too bothered about what they look like underneath. Like a standard clone is the same head all the way through, isn't it? And I feel if you were going to give us other heads, then they would need to be named clones, and therefore they'd need to be on a card back or in a pack of their own, however you want to do that. And as I said, with Mandalorians, a lot of them don't take the helmets off, so I don't really see the need for that. But in terms of, you know, Imperial officers and just random background characters, then providing other heads is a pretty cool idea in my opinion. Scott Borum says, Merry Christmas, Tim, to you and the family. Question for next week. Well, 2 questions. With the release of the Heir to the Empire 3-pack in TVC and with the Shadows of the Empire figures being released in the Black Series, do you see them doing any Shadows of the Empire figures in TVC? The fans seem to be wanting more and more from the expanded universe. Also, do you think we will get a new land speeder to fit in with the Return to Tatooine theme? Thanks for what you do for the collecting community and have a great new year. Also, as for the Marauder HasLab, we better get a new Imperial shuttle before we get that. So there you go. Another person wants an Imperial shuttle. So yeah, absolutely. I can't see any reason why we wouldn't get more expanded universe figures in the line, especially if that set does well. It's like everything in TVC. If something does well, then ultimately they'll do more of it, right? And considering that they do sort of share digital sculpts in some capacity between the 2 lines, we've seen the Princess Leia and the Ahsoka figure, for example, pretty much identical between 3.75 inch and the 6-inch line. So we know that they kind of do that sort of thing. So they've done figures for Shadows of the Empire in Black Series, as you mentioned, so I really do not see why we wouldn't get those in TVC at some point. As for the land speeder, we'll have to wait and see on that. I'm pretty sure that we will get a vehicle for Return to Tatooine, and that poster suggests that something has left some tracks there, so that's either going to be a beast or potentially a land speeder, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that. Daffyd says, yeah, boss, Merry Christmas. Hope you and little Bossk having great time bonding over the new toys. My question is a little of a pickle that might need some fan polls. The Phantom, it's clear we all want it, and those of us with HasLabs somewhat would like it to slot into place, but would we? What about a proper scale Phantom like a Republic gunship, a bit smaller in width, vehicle that could hold up to 4 figures in the back and 2 up front? It certainly wouldn't fit onto the back of the Ghost, but it'd be a great display piece next to the Ghost or near it. I feel it's just right size to be made, not too big. It'd have to be a HasLab, but as mentioned, if it doesn't fit onto the Ghost, how many would want it? I'm not too sure I agree on it having to be a HasLab necessarily just for the Phantom, but I'm in the camp of if they're going to do a Phantom 1, then ultimately I want it to fit on the Ghost. I know it's going to be undersized, and a lot of people don't like that Phantom and the sort of reduced sized chopper figure and things like that. But for me, if you've got that huge Ghost, the Phantom 1 kind of needs to interact with it, in my opinion. Other people might be of the opinion that, you know, it needs to be separate and it doesn't matter whether it clips on or not. They just want a in-scale Phantom 1. But for me, now we've got the Ghost, I personally feel there's only real one way to go. But we'll have to see if they do anything at all regarding the Phantom 1. We really don't know at this point. But for me, it would have to sort of clip onto the Ghost. But let me know in the comments section below what you think about that. Zill1543 says, what are your thoughts on the amount of HasLab Ghosts and figures appearing on eBay? This is definitely an interesting question, my friend. And first of all, I feel it's something that always happens with every HasLab, or at least the last 2. Razor Crest and the Ghost. Many people out there will buy multiple HasLabs as an investment. It's a simple fact. Some people like to sort of get rid of them early and just make a small amount of money on their investment. Maybe they'll buy 2 or 3, sell 2, hopefully make them enough money, which means that the one that they've bought for themselves has not cost them anything at all. Maybe that is the case, but it is a fact that people buy multiples of these HasLabs as an investment. Some people want the Ghost itself, don't care about the carded figures, and feel, I'm going to sell those carded figures, keep the Ghost, and hopefully the money that I get from selling the carded figures will pay for the majority of my Ghosts. So you've got people out there that will do that as well. I think Hasbro kind of know that this sort of thing happens, and I've talked to a few people on sort of, convention floors and things like that. And ultimately, I believe that they believe that there's about 8,000 to 10,000 people that buy a HasLab to keep. And then what they're hoping is that those people, or a large majority of those people, buy multiples. So some might buy 2 to get another set of carded figures. Some people might buy even more than that. But ultimately, I think what happens is, it's always the way, people get these things in hand and then they go on the secondary market. There'll be an influx now and then it will calm down a little bit. What I would say is that the Ghost is a little bit different in that it is absolutely huge. It is heavy. The box is heavy. And I think it may have shocked a few people. And maybe the people that have bought them to, keep for a little while are thinking, how am I even going to store this? Where am I going to put this thing? And maybe they're getting rid of them early. And that's why there's a bigger influx on the market of Ghosts. And it's true, the box is absolutely huge. It's just so difficult to store. And if you're not going to open it, would you really want that thing hanging around? I mean, your other half's going to be on at you and things like that. So that's my sort of opinion on it. It always happens, my friend. It will probably calm down. But the fact remains that a large majority of people buy these things as an investment. Because ultimately, once the window is closed, you can't buy it anymore. So it becomes like an exclusive item. So that's my opinion on it, really. Barada73 says, do you think a new Ewok village could be a successful HasLab for TVC? I think it would work if they made it a significant upgrade from the vintage playset. They could build off the same basic structure, but make it much larger, maybe up to 4 feet tall with at least 3 different levels and enough space underneath for an ATST to pass under. They could fill it out with some rope bridges, nets, log traps, elevators, and maybe even include new versions of the Ewok glider and catapult as stretch goals. If they wanted to go for more modest stretch goals, then how about a new C-3PO on his throne, Ewok Celebration Lando, a figure we've never got in any line, and maybe even Captain Rex as an Endor Commando. So all of that, again, to me sounds absolutely fantastic. But from what I was just saying about the Ghost, that playset you're talking about there, big enough to have an ATST walk underneath it, would be absolutely huge. And I'm not too sure if I would have the space to display it. For sure, in my mind, I think, wow, that would be amazing. And I've got lots of stuff that can go with it. We've got the Endor bunker, we've got the ATST, we've got speeder bikes. You could make a really, really cool diorama. There is no doubt about it. But with everything that you've described there, I'm not even sure how much that would be, but it would be a lot. And I'm not too sure where I would put it. But it's one of those, isn't it? It sounds great on paper, but in reality, wow. Toribio Mendiola says, hey Tim, thanks for all you do for the community. Question for next week. Do you think we'll get an ESB Boba Fett stroke Jedi Survivor in 2025? They could also repaint it for the War of the Bounty Hunters black armor. Oh man, have you just spoiled Jedi Survivor for me? I haven't really played it. I'm only joking. I do know that Boba Fett does make an appearance in there. And, is it the exact ESB armor, or I don't know. There's a few different armors going on, isn't there? But for sure, we do need a new Empire Strikes Back version of Boba Fett. This one just does not cut it anymore when you compare it against the Return of the Jedi version. So I'm with you that we need it. Whether Hasbro will do it or not is another thing entirely, because the armor is slightly different and his clothes and everything are slightly different to the Return of the Jedi version. So I'm not too sure how much of that figure that they could use for it, but it's certainly something that I would like to see them do. And you're absolutely right. They could do the War of the Bounty Hunters black armor using that sculpt as well. So I'm sure they know all of this, and fingers crossed they've got it on the agenda, and hopefully we'll see something soon. Lord Unforgiven says, hello BB, hope you had a great Christmas with your family and relatives. I was giving a look at the newly tooled figures for 2025, and we have already 9 to 10 announced, which does cut out the probability of having new figures in Comic-Con season, which I find odd. Do you think we'll get more than 15 next year? Or this year now, because it's 2025. So yeah, I had a little bit of a count up as well with like pipelined and some rumoured ones on Jason from Yakface's list. And it does seem that potentially we could have maybe 13 or 14 announced, pipelined, straight rumoured. The Joris one was a complete surprise in that 3-pack. That is a 100% newly tooled figure, so that one's been added to the list as well. So it does look like potentially that we could get more. And, you know, with other things still to be announced, like, you know, another Skeleton Crew figure, for example, does that mean that's going to be a 100% newly tooled figure? We'll just have to wait and see, but let's just hope that they've, you know, budgeted for a little bit more, or maybe some of the figures that will get announced at all the Comic Cons and things like that may not be 100% newly tooled, but maybe 80%, and they like share the same hands or feet or something like that. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but 2025 is definitely shaping up to be a better year than 2024, that is for sure. Commander Powell says, hi BB, I'm going out on a limb and predicting the next HasLab will either be an Imperial Shuttle or the Marauder if it's not a playset. I'd love an Imperial Shuttle because I'm first and foremost an OT fan. However, I'm mildly concerned that some collectors may pass on funding it if they already are happy enough with the one that exists. Question next week. Do you imagine the community might be more supportive of the Marauder as a whole because of the more wider appeal to collectors, young and old, in addition to getting figs for the Bad Batch? Or do you think the nostalgia of the Imperial Shuttle would be great enough draw? It seems as though the new media garners more support for TVC projects, unfortunately. I'm not 100% sure if that's actually true. I mean, you know, the Cantina is an example of it not doing so well as the others, but there was a load of other factors around why that didn't perform as well as the others. The fact that it's a playset for the first time, the fact that it had a shorter window, it wasn't available over San Diego Comic-Con, which is a huge mistake. So there's quite a few things going against it. I think if you were to do a vehicle from the original trilogy, it would be supported quite heavily. But with the Marauder, I think it's more about the Bad Batch, really. I think the fact that we are being starved of the Bad Batch figures and so many people want them, they may feel that the Marauder is the vehicle, excuse the pun, in the way that we get those Bad Batch figures, and that actually might be the case. So we'll have to wait and see what they do. I'm pretty sure we will get another HasLab. I heard Steve Evans say that they're not slowing down on HasLab, so that could potentially mean that we will be getting one every year, that the TVC is still around. So, but yeah, I'm with you, buddy. If I had the choice between the Marauder and the Imperial Shuttle, I personally would want the Imperial Shuttle as well. But I would definitely back the Marauder. I think it's a cool ship, and I do also want the Bad Batch figures as well. So there's two reasons there, but ultimately, as I said, I just think we've been starved so much from those Bad Batch figures for so long that the Marauder would definitely back, in my opinion. All right then, guys, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for watching, and please be sure to leave your questions in the comment section below for next week's episode. We're going to be back on track doing these every Sunday now the holidays are out the way, so thank you so much for watching. Thanks to my Patreon supporters and channel members as always for your support. It is greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we shall see you on the next one.